And so by the time I got there, I heard fourth prize goes to, and fifth prize goes to, and I said to somebody, who won first? And some Polish lady points and smiles and said, you did!
Garrick, it's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too, Ben.
It's the eve of the 18th International Chopin Competition. You sat on the jury in 2015 in Warsaw. Where are you right now?
I'm in Davenport, Iowa.
And what's your favorite thing to do in Iowa?
Probably play with the Quad City Symphony, which is what I'm doing this weekend.
And what piece are you playing?
The Barber Piano Concerto, the Great American Piano Concerto.
How do you process the 5/8 last movement?
It's pretty easy once you get used to it and you're no longer afraid of it. It's 2 plus 3 most of the time. Sometimes it's 3 plus 2.
I want you to imagine for a moment that Chopin was transported to Warsaw 2021 in a time machine to sit on the jury of his own competition. What would he be listening for, and what might he think of today's young Chopin interpreters?
Well, if he were the Chopin we know anything about, he would hate everything about the idea. And he would probably not recognize the sound of modern pianos at all, or the style in which we play, because it's evolved so much since his time. I think he would hate the democracy of it. I think he would hate having this big jury choose. He didn't like big halls, and the Philharmonic Hall in Warsaw, although not huge, is somewhere in the 1,000 or 1,100 range, I believe. I don't think that's where he felt his music or he shone. And he shone in salons. He only played 30 concerts in his whole life. The bigger the hall, the more he hated it. I have no idea what he would be looking for if he were a modern person. He was a royalist. He was incredibly well educated. He was incredibly smart, incredibly snobbish, if you will. Didn't suffer fools gladly. And I think, didn't suffer even a genius like Franz Liszt sometimes to play some of his pieces. When Liszt added some ornaments to his nocturnes, his comment to a Polish friend was, "Keep that pig out of my garden." And on the other hand, Chopin went gaga hearing Liszt play Chopin's own etudes because he could do them in a way that Chopin couldn't, because Chopin was the original 90-pound weakling, and actually anybody who wins a Chopin prize these days is not going to be a 90-pound weakling, although they may not be a big bruiser like me.
There's a couple of videos of you performing Chopin etudes in black and white. Can you tell us a little bit about that recording? It's the first two Chopin etudes, and you're cleanly shaven.
Oh yeah, well, this was done in Poland at the time of the Chopin competition. The Poles have, at least since my competition and even before, been great documenters of, Polish film art is legendary. Even one is interestingly filmed, a camera on top, which was, for the time, quite adventurous,
It's still hard. I have to do it for a living, and it's never easy. You didn't quite get the ticker tape parade of Van Cliburn when you came back.
No.
You did get to appear on the Dick Cavett show, though, and I've reviewed the tape there.
Will you welcome, please, Garrick Ohlsson?
Thank you.
Sammy Davis Jr. questions you about your beard.
That's right. And what did I say?
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Did you grow this so that you would look a little more distinguished? Because you have a very young face and you're a very young man.
Mm-hmm.
Did that have anything to do with it?
No, it didn't really, actually. I just grew it because I decided it would be fun to try once, and I liked it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I cut it off for the jury in Warsaw because you don't know what, there were 19 members, and you don't know what subconscious prejudices there might be.
Against a hairy face.
Right, yeah, or an American with a beard.
Yeah.
Yes, well, this was during the age of the Nixon presidency, and Spiro Agnew was our vice president at the time, and he raged against all these, young men who were growing beards because just, especially when they looked like yours, which mine did at the time, you look like some counterculture protester, probably a liberal or something. I mean, my goodness.
Or a communist.
Yes, actually communist, right.
Yeah.
And I won this prize in a communist country. Interestingly, I had the beard before I went to Warsaw, and shaved it off for Warsaw because a Polish woman I know well said you really ought to get rid of the beard. She said because many of the judges in Poland and other European countries will be equally conservative and will not like. That gives them an extra reason, what we call a red herring. It gives them an extra reason just not to like you. So don't give them that ammunition because it has nothing to do with your playing. Also, it was interesting because since Eugene Ormandy changed his program in Philadelphia, and I got back 2 weeks later and played with the Philadelphia Orchestra. Then when I played with him the next time, about a year later, I had grown my beard back, and boy, he didn't like it either. So there was a kind of thing amongst people of an older generation who were in control of the power, basically.
Have they seen photos of Brahms?
I didn't. When you've got your date with Eugene Ormandy, you want another. You would like another one because it's so wonderful.
You don't talk back.
You don't talk back when you're 20, 23.
Do you remember what it felt like when they called your name in 1970?
Exactly. Exactly, because there was quite a lengthy wait in the public areas of the Philharmonic Hall. Somebody said to me in English they were announcing the winners, and there was a radio microphone that was being announced. And so by the time I got there, I heard in Polish, French, and English, and fourth prize goes to, and fifth prize goes to, and I said to somebody, who won first? And some Polish lady points and smiles and said, you did!
Were there butterfly etudes in your stomach?
Enormously. As a matter of fact, I knew I was one of the possible first prizes. You have a sense of that from how you've done, from the audience reaction, from the reaction of the public, and general excitement towards your person, which in Warsaw they really pay attention to who they like. And I had become a sort of a local favorite too. So uh, I was I was probably more nervous than I can ever remember being. And I don't know exactly why, because as we know, it's not a rational thing. If you don't win that prize, it's terribly sad and it's too bad, but you've got to get to plan B, which I knew in my head, but I felt I was so close and I wanted this one so bad. And if this one went the way I wanted it to, it would do so much, and it did.
The Chopin competition was founded in part to sort of restore Chopin's reputation. What was Chopin's reputation in the late 19th, early 20th century in certain parts of Europe that might have made the newly founded and established nation of Poland want to say, hey, this is our guy and this is serious music?
Well, taking Poland first, as you said, the newly liberated and newly existing nation state of Poland since 1918 wanted, of course, like all countries do, to lay claim to their best and greatest and finest. And so Chopin being unquestionably the greatest Polish composer that had happened up till that point, and the most important one in the whole European scene, was somebody to be laid claim to. But I think it went deeper than that and much more seriously because he had become sentimentalized. Um, in other words, he was the hypersensitive neurasthenic who dipped his pen in perfume to write nocturnes for lovesick countesses and everybody swooned. Or I actually heard somebody once say backstage in Italy, a sort of, stage person saying, "What's your program tonight?" And I said, "It's all Chopin." He said, "Oh, the old ladies will love that." And then, of course, that's politically incorrect now. We're not allowed to say it, but I just said it. So, in other words, it implies that Chopin is somehow, not only not manly, but somehow not vigorous, not strong, not worthy. And that, of course, was something that followed him all his life, because even when he was a student in Warsaw, um, Elsner, his teacher, and the fine music teachers there said, "You're obviously the greatest talent we've ever imagined happening here. You must write masses and concertos and symphonies and sonatas and chamber music and show the world that we too can produce a first-class composer." And Chopin didn't do that. He knew himself, and he just stuck to his mostly smaller forms, with some wonderful exceptions. And I guess in that way, and plus, since his own playing style was so intimate and non-extroverted and non-heroic, as you know, he died just at a time when the middle class was taking hold of music, and halls were getting bigger and louder, and orchestras were getting louder, and pianos were getting bigger and louder. And part of the virtuosity of being a pianist was to be able to match the force of orchestras and thrill people with your volume and your velocity and your powers of projection. Those were all qualities that don't think he dealt with very much. So I think became he was always widely loved and appreciated, but he was the sort of swoon composer, or if you will, the dessert composer, the tastiest, the most delicious, the sweetest. And I've just to quote myself, I've said it many times. It's a sort of a tagline. He certainly is the greatest pastry chef among the great composers. There's no question that anybody can even come close until maybe Debussy and Ravel in a certain way, and even they can't top him for the sheer exquisiteness of his the sweetness of his creations. But his music isn't just sweet; it has an underlying chord of iron logic and strength. And in a way, the contradiction in Chopin for me is that music that has so much surface sweetness has so much underlying steel, structure. He's a brainiac like Brahms or Bach, even in many ways. It's just his music doesn't sound like that. But Chopin is a structuralist as well as the great improviser. He's a fierce and fiery composer of immense strength, and even an immense tensile strength in the delicate creations. So now I'm just going on about how much I love Chopin. I think all that contributed to the idea that Chopin had to be rescued from the bad sentimental excesses of this salon where he was heard so often, and which was his home. When Chopin went to a salon, I believe there's a story, he went with either Berlioz or Mendelssohn, and he heard the Opus 135 Quartet of Beethoven and said, we'll never do anything that great. And that's not the romantic Chopin that we think of. And also at those salons might be Heinrich Heine or Mickiewicz or Robert Schumann or Liszt or Berlioz or any, if I could name the cream of French literature, those were quite some salons, it seems to me.
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around playing the coda to the barcarolle pianissimo.
I don't understand that. I don't know if it's an urban legend or a real legend or a true fact. We do know that creative interpreters in our time, or rather before our time, but a great artist I heard many times, Vladimir Horowitz, sometimes made magic by turning things backwards, Um, but this report about the Barcarolle coda was supposed to be when Chopin was very old and very ill, and wasn't the report that despite the lack of power, it was just as enchanting or entrancing or whatever? I don't know. Maybe somebody was feeling, sympathetic. Maybe they weren't as convinced, but they wanted to, acknowledge his genius. People have lots of reasons for saying what they say, and sometimes it's great kindness. But whether that writer meant for us to know for the rest of time that we should think about playing the Barcarolle pianissimo, the coda pianissimo, I doubt it very much. And of course, we have the equally apocryphal story about his young German strong pupil Gutmann, who broke a string while playing one of the big polonaises, and he apologized in confusion and said, "Young man, if I had your strength, there would not be a string left in the piano when I was finished." So it didn't mean that he didn't want to. It's just like the standard feeling about a person who is not large in physical stature. Does that mean they have a less large mind or feelings? Hardly.
The most popular piece chosen by the preliminary round competitors this year was the fourth ballad.
Well, it's one of his peak creations. It's an exceedingly concentrated and complex and emotionally difficult work, and pianistically challenging in every respect. It shows a great deal about a musician and a pianist. It's horribly, horribly revealing. But yet, any of these young pianists, all of whom are quite accomplished, really excellent, sure, you want to show off what you can do with one of Chopin's greatest pieces. Why not? I mean, great. So I'm not disapproving. It's just you've picked you've picked a difficult one.
Are you going to follow this competition at all?
I have a terrible confession to make, which is that listening to any number of even fine young artists play endless reams of Chopin after a while is not my favorite sport. I don't know why. I guess I'm just not enough of an addict, but I've already picked out a few people who I think I'm interested in. I will not say who. Competitions, after all, let's not forget, are a lottery. No matter what, there's no guarantee you will win anything, no matter how good you are. Some people fall apart because of nerves. Some people play better because of nerves. That was usually my case. I was one of those kids who, whenever I had to really turn it on, I could. That's a temperamental question. So no matter how good you are, even if you are as good as Paulini, young Paulini, when he won the prize, will every member of the jury see it that way? And it's perfectly legitimate for them not to, I think, because um, there were people I loved more at the 2015 competition than some of the other jury. It's very clear from our public scores. And there was a wide range of, and I would not go up to any member of that jury and say, well, you're wrong. I mean, that's not how we all behave with each other. It's not, that's really counterproductive. We could have some spirited discussions over things, over cups of coffee, but it never came to anything unattractive. Although I thought that there were some people who were really just completely wrong, but they were respectable pianists and musicians. So, not my business. I suppose if I didn't like any of it, I should run my own competition. No, thank you.
Well, Garrick, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for taking time out of your day, the day before performance. I'll
Sure.
let you get back to your hotel room to visualize the 5/8 on the last movement and practice in your mind.
Luckily, I've been visualizing it for 35 years now, so I'm pretty much okay with it. But no, but I also just want to say it's at the risk of being sentimental that um, it's really astounding uh, the interest in this particular competition that has maintained its consistency and its level over more successfully perhaps than any other single one that we can name. I mean, it should be because Chopin is the piano composer, but that's not a title like boxing champion. It's he. This competition seems to attract an incredible amount of really good people, and I just want to say that in a troubled world, it's nice to think that there are 150 young pianists in the preliminaries, or now what it is at 80 or 87, who will play now. All of whom, even if they're not your favorite and most interesting artists, all of whom will play a plausible and very good version of these very difficult to play Chopin pieces. So either it means that playing Chopin and playing the piano is easier than we think it is, and we know it's not, or that there are an awful lot of people who are willing to apply themselves to something they love very deeply. So I just want to say that's, how do we say that in America? It's worth a shout out. It's just when you hear about how terrible the young generation is, think of these kids and thousands of their colleagues doing other similar wonderful things around the world. So there.